Oh hey, it's me again. And you know, I've been wondering, what utterly ridiculous shenanigans got us here? I'm gonna need a bigger drink. How did we get here? Well, one day, I woke up. Ugh! For some reason, probably the concussion, I set about researching and jotting down every single significant detail in the history of Sonic the Hedgehog. Major games, spin-off games, portable games, arcade games, mobile games, comics, movies, scrap games, some prominent fan projects, and even more. All written, labeled, and dated in a massive document. When I was finished, I snapped out of my weird trance, looked at my work, and started questioning reality. And I then realized that reality is real and I'm a silly man who's got a great idea for a YouTube video. Oh, so that's how we got here. This video is the first in a potentially very long series of videos that aim to cover everything Sonic the Hedgehog. Each video will cover either 1 or 2 years of Sonic's history and all games, comics, movies, and other media released in those years. Now obviously, I'm gonna miss some things, my research isn't 100% accurate after all, so if you notice something that should be there, let me know in the comments and I'll put it in a section at the end of the next video. With all that being said, welcome to the Ultimate Sonic Retrospective. Sega was in a pretty weird spot when Sonic the Hedgehog was being developed. They had seen moderate success with their previous console, the Master System, but couldn't even compare with the utter domination of Nintendo's 8-bit console, the NES. Their current mascot, Alex Kidd, was deemed too similar to Mario to be worth continuing with. So they held a company-wide contest to create a new mascot for their newest console, the Sega Mega Drive. Yeah, it's called the Mega Drive and other reasons. Don't ask me why, because I don't have answers. They went through many submissions, including a wolf, a robot, a kangaroo, and even a rabbit. Eventually they narrowed it down to either an armadillo or a hedgehog. Obviously they picked the hedgehog. This armadillo concept would later become the basis for Mighty the Armadillo. Then concepts for the world and other characters that might inhabit it started flying around like flickies the second you touch a spike ball. Gosh dang it! Notable concepts such as Sonic being part of a band, hey is that Vector? Having a human girlfriend, oh please no, and fighting some nightmarish force of evil, were left on the cutting room floor, probably for the better. Finally, a team of 8 took to programming, designing, drawing, and composing what would become Sonic the Hedgehog. This blue ball of spikes is the reason for Sega's sudden jump into prominence. I mean, he had it all. He had speed, he had personality, and most of all, he had an attitude. A massive success and show stealer of the 1991 Consumer Electronics Show, Sonic the Hedgehog was set to become the main rival of heavy hitter Nintendo during the 16-bit era. The consumers loved the game, it was given glowing reviews, sold like hotcakes, and generally blew all expectations out of the water. Now enough dilly-dallying, let's talk about the game itself. The very first thing you're greeted by is the Sega jingle, which, fun fact, is only able to exist because they had to cut the sound test for time. You know, history's weird like that. For example, Andrew Jackson destroying the United States economy would eventually lead to the Texas War of Independence. Weird, huh? Starting the game immediately presents Green Hill Zone, which despite the fact that all of us are incredibly tired of seeing it, it is an incredibly well-designed stage. The level presents multiple different paths that allow more skilled players to zip across the landscape on the higher paths, while giving newer players enough grace in the bottom path, offering things like breakable walls and plenty of opportunities to climb back up to the higher ones. By the end of the first stage, players should be well acquainted with the concepts of rings, badniks, and the physics of slopes. Let's go over those real quick since they're pivotal to classic Sonic's design. Rings, in particular, are one of the main reasons Sonic is able to be so fast-paced without utterly overwhelming the player, because as long as you have one ring, you'll survive a hit. Then, if you act fast enough, you can grab the ring that got punched out of your back pocket and have it ready to block the next mechanical machination Robotnik's got aimed at you. This ring crutch allows you to go fast without worrying about losing health that's hard to get back or missing out on a power-up that would have been helpful. Mario. On the other hand, collecting and holding onto a large amount of rings, which is much more difficult since you lose all of them when hit, will allow access to the special stages and a much higher score bonus. This encourages experienced players to not get hit and generally just play the game very well. Now the badniks are your average evil robots. You know the drill. Spiky, dangerous, suspiciously bug-shaped. They usually won't be the ones killing you unless you're taking things way too fast and don't have any rings, but they provide simple challenges for the player to overcome and usually have some specific timing or weakness to them. The physics of slopes were a new concept at the time, so Green Hill Zone starts mostly flat and gradually increases the amount of slopes and loops to teach the player that slanted surfaces do in fact change how you traverse the landscape. Moving, and especially rolling, down a slope will build momentum, while going up a slope will cost some. This is most evident in these sections over here in Spring Yard Zone. We'll get there later.
Alright, I made it to a special stage. I got this in the bag, just you watch. So I'm not going for the good ending.
Finally, we make it to the third stage of Green Hill Zone, which is shorter overall, but contains the very first boss fight with Eggman, the Disco Boulder Basher, or whatever they're calling it these days. It's really easy, even more so if you can grab the hidden invincibility power-up over there. Every boss level ends with a big capsule of animals to save, and Sonic, did you just kill all of them? Oh wait, they're fine. How?
The next area is Marble Zone, which takes all the good and fun and speed from Green Hill Zone and throws it out the window.
This zone is full of lava and spikes and crushers and badniks and slowly moving platforms and good grief, it's no wonder many players never made it past this point. Many times you are forced to just sit on a thin block and wait as it slowly moves across lava, or on a chain, or across the floor being pushed by you. This is not to mention the many times you'll have to wait for the traps to finish their animation and get out of the way. I rarely manage to get to the special stages in this zone because of how mean its trap placement is. Oftentimes, I'll get hit by something and just ask, what? I was able to scrape up enough rings by playing the level even slower to reach a special stage, but even then, with my luck, it's unlikely I'll actually get a Chaos Emerald. Wait, I got one. Cool.
The boss of this stage is simple, if a little annoying, but that could describe almost every boss in the game, so let's shut up and move on to
Spring Yard Zone, the level that tells you to just cope.
What? Yeah, that's right, cope!
Full of springs and bumpers, this is basically the precursor to the casino and pinball stages that would get more used later. Momentum and ramps are once again more prevalent, as they should be. This level is a little hard on the Genesis at times, especially in the boss battle where each of these blocks is actually 4 separate sprites. This leads to some interesting hit detection. However, if you grab the secret invincibility power-up and make a break for it, you can easily roll through the boss. Labyrinth Zone sucks. It's just facts, man. The water physics are slow and slippery sometimes. Most of the traps are made much worse because of the slow physics. The boss isn't even a boss, just a screw you do more annoying platforming underwater section. And drowning is a painful reality that you just have to plan every single waking second around. Get me out of here!
I never want to play through Labyrinth Zone again, and thankfully the next zone is a lot less headache-inducing.
Starlight Zone, a relaxing soundtrack, fun platforming except for these fans, and a boss that complements the previous stages by thoroughly using the main stage gimmick. Just a good time that warms you up for...
Scrap Brain is just Labyrinth Zone if you drained all the water and made it tech-themed. Why are you booing me? I'm right!
We've got obstacle that protrudes in and out vertically, platforms that follow a track, platforms that fall out from under you, and oh never mind, the third act just becomes Labyrinth Zone Act 4. Then there's Final Zone that's just kinda there. It's not particularly hard to dodge the crushers as long as you take things slow, and the electric balls are simple enough as well. It's just a grand exercise in patience, which is not something I want to do in a Sonic game. Final boss? More like final joke, and I didn't get it. If you didn't manage to get all of the Chaos Emeralds from the not super well designed special stages, Eggman taunts you at the end by telling you to try again. Try again? No thanks, chum. I'd sooner boot up Wonder Boy and go through that whole rigmarole all over again.
Someone's at the door. No! And that's Sonic the Hedgehog. Overall, not the best game in the series, but it got a lot of things right off the bat. Like the rings, the slope physics, and sometimes the speed.
But the question everyone was certainly asking was, but can it run on the Game Gear?
Kind of?
Released just 4 months after the original, Sonic the Hedgehog for the Master System and Game Gear would hit the market for those unable to purchase a next-gen console like the Genesis. This is a surprisingly well-done backport of the Genesis version, but it's obviously held back by the hardware it was developed for. And that is most obvious with the badniks.
They weren't particularly threatening in the original, and it's much the same here, except for one small, little, tiny difference. They can lag the game.
If too many enemies and rings are on screen, the game chugs, which can actually reduce your momentum at times.
The idiotic machines are pushing this poor console to its limits, and I don't think it's going to be much longer before they decide to push it too far.
Just get used to taking them out on sight, and all will be well. The devs tried pretty hard to avoid this slowdown at all costs, even with the shield, which flickers between Sonic being visible and the shield being visible to reduce the amount of sprites on screen, which is pretty smart. Checkpoints also work completely differently and are instead a breakable monitor like the invincibility, life, and shields are. This is again to reduce how many different assets they needed to put into the game, reusing the monitor asset and an exclamation point from the special stage sign. One of the very first things you'll actually see upon starting the game is a level map. And I really like this because it gives the locations more of a place in a world and less of a video gamey now entering level 2. On an entirely unrelated note, the Chaos Emeralds and special stages are completely different now. Chaos Emeralds are now found inside of the levels in hidden alcoves and secret areas. I think this is interesting, but it might take away from the speed of the game now that you have to comb the level for a flickering blue gem.
Special stages are now just ways to get more continues and extra lives, which is sorely needed in this game because the ring crutch is gone.
If you get hit, your rings go bye-bye. They don't fall on the floor or let you pick them back up. Nope. They're gone now. Don't get hit a second time. The first area is again Green Hill Zone, and it's pretty similar to its Genesis brother, except that is for the lack of water and bridges. This is because that part was split off into an entirely different zone called the Bridge Zone. This is an alright area with some okay stage gimmicks, but here is where they put something that is just completely unacceptable in a Sonic game. An auto-scrolling level.
Smells like Mario in here.
I don't know why this is here, and I'm glad it never came back. The boss stages in this game are exceptionally brutal for a Sonic game, and I'll tell you what, they actually gave me some trouble. Why? Well, silly, it's because they don't give you any rings! Not a single one! One hit, and you're dead. Other than that, these bosses are kinda pathetic. But the mere fact that they can kill you in one hit is kind of insane. Okay, that's Bridge Zone, so do we get Marble Zone now? Jungle Zone? Yeah, this game actually has 2 original zone ideas. You got river currents, waterfalls, vines, and all sorts of interesting platforming. I honestly really like this zone, and its second act is a vertical climb up a waterfall, which is pretty cool. The only real problem with the zone I found is that right after the boss, it's possible to...
You wanna talk about it?
No.
Now we finally reach the inevitable Labyrinth Zone, which has some actually really good music. Unfortunately, this is probably the worst part of the game. The water not only slows you down like it normally should, but it also contributes to the already shaky frame rate problem. On top of that, drowning is a lot easier, and the traps are even harder to dodge because you never know when the frame rate is just gonna tank, leading to your air velocity disappearing and your rings evaporating just as quickly. At least the boss is an actual boss this time. Oh, come on, that's not even fair!
Apparently everyone, including the 8-bit version, forgot about Starlight Zone completely, so we just go straight to Scrap Brain. Which is weird. There needs to be 6 zones, but that only makes 5.
Scrap Brain Zone is pretty similar to its Genesis counterpart. Except for the third act, because instead of being hell on earth, it's a short maze that leads to Eggman escaping on a platform. This leads to Sky Base, the real final zone of the game. Yup, this game actually has 3 original zone ideas. and this one is the best of them all. Stormy skylines, electrical bolts, a phenomenal soundtrack, and some of the most difficult platforming in the game. It also features a big Zeppelin, and Zeppelins are cool. The final boss is pretty okay, all things considered. It's a little funky when trying to predict it, but once you got it down, it's easy as pie. You know, minus the fact that you have no rings.
Honestly, I'm impressed with how well the Master System was able to handle Sonic the Hedgehog. And since the Game Gear has such similar specs, it must be even better. Oh. Well, that would explain why everyone keeps saying that Sonic 1 on the Game Gear is so hard. Trust me, I understand that not being able to see further than 3 feet in front of you makes life a little difficult.
We're nearing the end of 1991 now, and there's just a couple of loose ends to tie up before this video goes the way of all things. The first is Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car. Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, I know. This was a kiddie arcade cabinet exclusive to Japan that featured Sonic as a police officer tracking down Dr. Eggman to keep him from breaking the law. Yup, it's ridiculous. But it's also the first time Sonic had a voice in the game. What?
It's weird how these things happen. I mean, who'd expect this, of all things, to be where Sonic first had a voice? I mean, I sure didn't, and I knew it already.
The other loose end is Sonic Eraser. It was only available through the Mega Modem satellite adapter. What, you're telling me you don't remember the Mega Modem satellite adapter? Yeah man, it was the best. If you had a subscription to the Sega Game Toshikan service and happened to live in Japan, it would send little games to your console every now and then like a radio station. Yeah, it was weird.
And that's 1991. Sonic's first year on the market was a meteoric rise to success that not even his parent company was expecting. And it's interesting to see how game production ramped up right after Sonic 1's release. Heck, Sonic 2 released less than a year later. But that's a story for next time. I am gonna vibe to the end credits music from the Master System. Bye!
Full of springs and bumpers, this is basically the precursor to the Consino. Consino? Consino. You want to go down to the Consino and garble?